welcome to the BoshNRoll channel. If you want to support my daily Eternal Magic offerings while getting amazing perks like the BoshNRoll Discord community, have me play your deck on the channel, or listen sideboard guides before tournaments, check out the Patreon or YouTube membership program. This channel is possible because of these amazing sponsors. Check them out, all their links are in the video description. As always, thanks for being here. Let's go play some Magic.
Hello and welcome back to the BoshNRoll channel. Today I'm doing my tournament report from the NYSE Vintage Open 9 that took place this past weekend on Long Island in New York. This is a recurring tournament over the last decade and a half or so. There were a few years where it didn't happen, but this was the 9th one run by Nick Detweiler. Shout out to Nick. This is basically the vintage tournament at this point. At least it's the one that grabs the feel of vintage. Back when cases of Power 9 were like $300, not $4,000. Playing vintage for Power 9 top 8 prizes was a thing that the format was really based on. Star City Games ran a Power 9 series for years where first place would get Black Lotus and then they would draft the power in sequential order, and first place would end up with the leftover one, which back in the day was Time Twister because that was the least expensive one. My how Commander changes things. But the idea of playing vintage and winning Power 9 as a prize is really special, and Nick is keeping it alive out there. The prizes for this tournament were all of the power except for Time Twister. So the 5 Moxen, Lotus, Ancestral, Time Walk. And they were drafted in order of first to last place. I ended up finishing 7th in this tournament, which got me this Time Walk. The prizes were, I mean, the sad face is a bit, I'm obviously very happy to win a Time Walk. The sad face is a bit, the joke was I won this tournament last year and I only got a Time Walk this year, not a Black Lotus. But for 7th place, based on the condition of the cards, even if a Mox Emerald might normally be worth more than a Time Walk, this Mox Emerald was worth more than this Time Walk. So we ended up with Time Walk as my 7th place pick, which I'm obviously very happy with. A great weekend's work. The deck I played, to the surprise of no one who has been watching my channel and how I've interacted with vintage lately in my videos, I played Lurrus Jeskai Paradoxical Outcome combo. Here it is on my Mox field where it's posted for anyone who wants to look at it, and as always, my Patreon had the list a few days before the event. The namesake card and the reason this deck exists is Paradoxical Outcome. Return any number of target non-land, non-token permanents you control to their owner's hands. Draw a card for each card returned to your hand this way. That card's pretty good in a format that is defined by free mana sources, or mana sources that replace themselves and go positive. If you target a Mox Sapphire, a Mox Ruby, and a Mana Crypt with Paradoxical Outcome, you draw 3 cards. These 3 things that you tap to cast Paradoxical Outcome go back to your hand, and then you could play them back out. It's like you drew 3 cards for totally free. And of course, if you have a 4th permanent, now you're up mana, and it's a 4th card. And that's basically the engine we're trying to kick in. You want a Paradoxical Outcome for like 3 to 5, and then you want the next one to be like for 7, and then the next one should win the game. Paradoxical Outcome is the deck that I won Vintage Champs with the year I won Eternal Weekend. I also have 2 other Vintage Champs top 8s with Paradoxical Outcome decks. I'm very familiar with this archetype, and for a while it was dead. The thing that brought it back was stock up. Look at the top 5 cards from your library, put 2 in your hand, the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Basically, the fundamental Magic thing being solved by stock up in the PO shell is PO has to play this massive density of artifact mana to make Paradoxical Outcome a card that you want to cast. But mana doesn't win the game if you don't cast something like Paradoxical Outcome. So stock up is an excellent kind of mini outcome where you can use a stock up to find Moxen to make your PO better, or you can convert your Moxen into cards with stock up, which then finds the type things like PO or more stock ups. Thundertrap Trainer, similar thing, incredible to play just on turn 1 off land Mox, and then offspringing it comes up quite commonly. And because we are a Lurrus Companion deck, there she is, Lurrus Companion deck, Thundertrap Trainer is a 2-drop that you can spend 6 mana on in this super late game where both players are out of gas and you got your Lurrus, you put it into play, and now you need to do something with the Lurrus. Putting 2 power across 2 creatures and digging 8 cards into your deck to get 2 of them should probably win the game if that happens just out of Lurrus anyway, like something that your opponent has already fought through once comes back. The Thundertrap Trainer plus Lurrus interaction makes combat really weird too, because if your opponent has like a 3/3 Orc army in play from Orcish Bowmaster and you have a Thundertrap Trainer, do they even want to trade off with that? Sometimes it's more dangerous in the graveyard because it represents more cards off of Lurrus. Just really cool texture to this game. And because Thundertrap Trainer is a wizard, we get Flame of Anor. Every single word on this card is good. Vintage is defined by artifacts. It's defined by card advantage. Sometimes there's a creature. If there is a creature, it's usually pretty small because it's there for the text box more than the stats. Like Tarmogoyf is not really a vintage card anymore, but Orcish Bowmaster and Lavinia and Lodestone Golem, these sort of things are vintage cards still, and they all die to 5 damage. And really just the most brilliant piece here is Fourth Aerolingus. This is the storm spell, like in deck building parlance. You need something to do with your big pile of mana when you're ripping through your deck. Like if you cast 3 Paradoxical Outcomes, you find Snapcaster Mage, then you can Snapcaster targeting Paradoxical Outcome, which picks up Snapcaster, and then snap all 3 outcomes back. You can easily draw your deck and basically tap all of these artifacts every time you cast PO to float mana. You have to win somehow. In the past, I have played Tendrils of Agony. I've played Monastery Mentor. There's a bunch of stuff you could do here, but Fourth Aerolingus is one of the best storm spells we've had, because the problem with storm spells is that when they're just in your hand, they're usually not good. You don't want to look at them until you're deep into your combo. But Fourth Aerolingus, I've won a lot of games in testing and in this tournament by just casting this for like X = 2 on turn 2 and becoming the Monarch, and I have a threat on the board, and now it's their problem. They have to come to me. I don't have to figure out how to combo anymore. They have to figure out how to not die. And just flipping the script, getting that double value out of your payoff spell, your combo payoff spell is so busted. Where I got to my specific list for, that was the overview for people who just needed to know what the deck does at all. My specific slots in the list. I'm not playing Demonic Tutor. There is a Magic Online user by the name of Unlucky Monkey who has been playing basically this archetype, but instead of basic Island, Monkey plays 1 Underground Sea and has 1 Demonic Tutor in the list, which is obviously really good if you're just focusing on combo, but now that the metagame has become a little more hostile to this, there's more main deck Flusterstorms and stuff, and the mirror match is something you have to beat. You kind of have to use those slots for reaction rather than proaction. And so I have completely cut the black from my deck. That gives me access to basic Island, and I don't have to worry about being color screwed in that direction. As far as the flex slots go, I have 1 Swords to Plowshares in my main. The other cards I considered in this slot are Chain of Vapor and Dress Down. It's really just 1 piece of interaction, and you want to try to line it up against the things you are worried about playing against. I really just personally don't like losing to White Initiative. And if this is better, Swords to Plowshares is better against the Lurrus control decks, and it's better against White Initiative. Chain of Vapor is probably better in the mirror, and then Dress Down is somewhere across the broad spectrum of things, like slightly more useful. Like I'd rather have Dress Down than either of those cards versus Doomsday, for example. Dress Down also is something that you could pop off with Lurrus. You could cast Dress Down out of your graveyard every turn to draw a card. Like there's some extra synergy there. Like Dress Down is the safe one, and then Plow and Chain are specific meta choices you can make. I went with Swords to Plowshares just because I hate White Initiative specifically, and I have a lot of respect for the Lurrus control decks. Clearing a Bowmaster or a Psychic Frog like permanently, not just bouncing it, is a big deal. The other thing I did, main deck to Pyroblast. I replaced the 3rd Mishra's Bauble with this. Mishra's Bauble is a card that is very good with Lurrus. Like, you really don't want to get to the mid game get your Lurrus, resolve your Lurrus, and then have nothing in your graveyard to do with it. And Mishra's Bauble is just one of the best cross-format things that you could do with a Lurrus to get yourself drawing an extra card every turn and see every card your opponent draws for the rest of the game. Bauble also gives you something easy to pick up with Paradoxical Outcome if you just need another permanent to pick up and put down for free, and it helps turn on Mox Opal. So there's several spots where not having the third Bauble matters, but what I found in my testing is the first stock up, the first PO, or the first Thundertrap trainer matters so much in these matches, and the mirror is something that I really wanted to try to grind out an edge in somewhere that I could, and Pyroblast is just the best tool there. So I gave up value in a number of other matchups to try to be slightly favored in the main deck against the mirror. That's kind of the sweaty deck building stuff. Let's review these matches. The BoshNRoll channel is brought to you by Tales of Adventure. TOAMagic.com has almost 100,000 unique cards in stock. They offer free track shipping on every order, plus next day or 2-day options when you have an event coming up fast. They offer on-site pickup at major Magic events throughout the US, so you're never scrambling before your tournament. Stop by their booth to buy, sell, or trade at upcoming regional championships, Magic Con, Spotlight Series, and more. I love their selection of individually scanned high-end cards that show you exactly what you're buying. And the best part is saving 5% on every order with promo code BOSH. From Ancestral Recall to Zombie Master, get what you need quickly and in one place at TOAMagic.com. Eternal lives here. For the matches themselves, I'm just going to scroll through my social media feed and do my best to remember the details from each of the matches. If you want these live updates, you can follow me on Blue Sky. I post my tournaments round by round as I play them. Here, I was a round 1 feature match. This was streamed to NYSE Open's Twitch. Maybe those VODs are up there. Don't quote me on that, but go check it out. Good chance. And this first feature pod was pretty good. We have Justin Gennari, I'm actually level 1, and Tony Scaponi, and me, and very sorry to my opponent here, whose head got smashed out of this picture by the gigantic NYSE Atlas Holding the World trophy. This thing is really big in person, and sorry opponent, got buried. But they got the final revenge. I won the die roll. My opponent did not reveal a Lurrus, and I mulliganed to 5 without ever seeing any piece of fast mana, which my deck plays a lot of. So there's 14 artifacts in here. 3 of them are baubles, or they're all baubles. The baubles don't make mana. So 11 sources of positive mana here. Saw 0 looks at an 11 outer in 21 cards. Pretty tough, but I mean, that's Magic. I eventually kept a hand that just had like Force Blue card, and it might have been like a Thundertrap trainer or something, like something I could do on turn 2. It's like land, Force Blue card, Thundertrap trainer. And my opponent played a Mox. I let it resolve, played a second Mox, and this is, I think, a mistake. I've been reflecting on this. Like when you lose over a decision you make, sometimes it's a mistake. Sometimes you just made the correct decision and lost anyway. If my opponent is on white initiative, it's pretty important to force of will the Mox, because if they've played their Mox without making their land drop for the turn. If they make their land drop for the turn after playing 2 Moxen and it's Cavern of Souls, I've lost my opportunity to force of will anything basically for the whole game. Like it's just over at that point. But if you could clip their mana, sometimes their whole hand falls apart. Well, my opponent played 1 Mox, I let it resolve. They played a second Mox, I force of willed it. And then they just passed without a play. And I thought, okay, we did it. But then it was Merchant Scroll, not Thundertrap Trainer. I drew for my turn, I cast my Merchant Scroll off of 2 lands, put Ancestral Recall in my hand, passed back to my opponent, who then on turn 2 went Mishra's Workshop, Scrawling Crawler. And if I knew my opponent was on Sphere Shops, I would have held my Force of Will for a payoff. I'm not going to fight over their mana because they have Mishra's Workshop that I can't counter anyway. It's just one of these things where there are 2 decks that can look similar on their opening sequence. And if my opponent had just played Mishra's Workshop before playing any Moxen, I would have held my Force. So great sequencing by my opponent. You want to play out your Moxen first before you make your land drop, especially game one in the blind. So I got by an advanced level play as a result of good sequencing from my opponent. And so Scrawling Crawler, I lose a life whenever I draw a card, and it has some stats on it. And I had just tutored for Ancestral Recall, but you know, what are you going to do? So I get to my turn, I draw, I lose a life, Ancestral, lose a life. I think maybe I got a mini paradoxical outcome out of this situation, but I'd lost so much life from the Scrawling Crawler that I just couldn't get back. And then he followed up the Scrawling Crawler with a Lodestone Golem, which really locked me out of the game. And I think that if I had held the force for the Scrawling Crawler and then Ancestral PO, but my life total is not under pressure, and Lodestone Golem is really good when you're at 5. It's not as scary when you're at 20, especially in a deck with as much mana as I play. So I think I could have won that game, but I over-respected the possibility that they might be white initiative. And I think that was a mistake because at 5 cards, I need that Force of Will to carry. And I think I just have to roll the dice. Like on 7, I would think it's the right play, and I just, got by a less popular matchup. But I think in the position we were in, where I had 5 cards and I really needed those 5 cards to deliver, I think I just have to roll the dice and hope that A, they're not initiative, or B, they don't have Cavern of Souls, and just fight over whatever the first payoff is. So I think I actually did mess up that game. Game 2, or before we move on to game 2, this matchup, when you're on the play, like once I saw they were Sphere Shops, my list has, in the main, 4 Force of Will, a Sink into Stupor, 2 Flame of Vanor, all of which are good against the lock pieces they might try to deploy. I also have Swords to Plowshares that could take out things like Scrawling Crawler and Lodestone Golem, and the aforementioned 11 ways to accelerate my mana over their spheres. And they're not a deck with counterspells. They might have some Mindbreak Traps in the sideboard, but game 1, if I had just had a hand that was like land 3 Mox and PO, they were dead and not a thing they could do about it. So although like losing game 1 sucks, at least I'm like, this is a matchup I'm quite comfortable in, and out of the sideboard, I then get access to Force of Negation, Hurkyl's Recall, Steel's Sabotage, as many plows as I want, up to 2 Portable Holes, and Seal of Cleansing, which you can loop with Lurrus and break out of long-term situations as well. A lot of tools for this matchup, and I'm on the play. And our game 2, I once again mulled to 5 before I saw a single piece of fast mana. My 5-card hand was, it was like Mox, Mana Vault, Time Walk, Force, blue card, land. Like that was my 7, and I think I bottomed Mana Vault and the land, and I just went like Mox, Time Walk, keep the Force blue card. My walk did not deliver Ascend, and then opponent gets to his turn and is like, Mishra's Workshop, tap it for 3, Null Rod, which I obviously have to Force of Will. All of my mana is artifacts. And after I Force of Will the Null Rod, going Hellbent, he goes with the floating mana and Mox Emerald, Null Rod. So double Null Rod start into my mull to 5, and that game ended. That was complete crushing, an actual mistake in game 1, but also just insane run bads in the mulligans there. And this is a cost of being a Lurrus deck. You don't get Tinker. You could play the card Tinker, but what are you going to Tinker for? Soul Ring? Like, you don't actually get to play Tinker in decks like this, unless you have Vault Key, which then is 2 slots that take up space that you don't need in this kind of build. If I were not a Lurrus deck, if I had Bolas' Citadel and Tinker in my deck, I could have gone to 4 or even 3 cards and just tried to find like land Mana Crypt Tinker and still easily win the game on 3 cards. But this deck actually does need both the mana to cast and then also the card itself of Trainer, Stock Up, or PO to really get going, and the critical mass of resources you need to make this deck hum. It's really tough to go any lower than 5 cards, and that all went there. And of course, it's like that early tournament thing. Anyone who's played a tournament has probably experienced this, where you work really hard, you test really hard, you get your list just how you like it, you get on an airplane, you I flew to New York City, and then I took a train out to the middle of Long Island. I'm here up bright and early and just get clocked by largely variance in round one against a matchup that I'm quite happy to play. And it feels bad to start, but you get one loss in a Swiss tournament. It could be round one or round seven, doesn't matter. This was my one loss and had to win out from there. Round two, I played against a bug deck, but it was not the traditional bug deck with Deathrite Shaman Collector Roof Oko. It was a bigger one. My opponent cast Mana Drain and Pernicious Deed in game one. Pernicious Deed, extremely good against the deck with this many artifacts that it relies on for mana. But the deck did have a lot of air in it, and I was able to keep pressure on just with Thundertrap Trainer and Snapcaster Mage. And even after getting Pernicious Deeded for like 5 permanents in game one, my opponent followed up with like Narset, who I was able to attack down with my random wizard material. And then later he came up with a Karn, who I was also able to attack down with random wizard material. In game one, my Miser's Swords to Plowshares, like he had to animate his Crucible of Worlds with Karn just to stop the 2-1 and 1-2 beatdown from killing Karn. And then Swords to Plowshares was able to answer Crucible and break up his Strip Mine lock and also let me attack Karn. That lined up about as well as it ever could. Got away with that one. Did manage to win that match mostly on the back of my 2-for-1 wizards that leave bodies behind. Round 3, I played against my top 4 opponent from last year. As I mentioned, I won the NYSE 8 Open a year ago, and this was my opponent in top 4. We met in the Swiss this time, and we were on a mirror match this time. Last time we met, he was on Control, and I was on Oath. This time it's the PO mirror, and I won game 1. The mirror can be susceptible to kind of Candyland magic, where I have an internal scale where if a deck is very popular, I want to know, A, is it so much better than the rest of the field that it's advantaged even though everyone knows about it? And B, what's the mirror like? And my scale is Candyland to chess, where there are extremely high skill mirrors like chess. Chess is literally a high skill mirror. You have all the same pieces and you have all the same information, and whoever plays better wins. Whereas Candyland, you just draw cards off the top of the deck and then your pieces move and there's actually no agency and no decisions to be made. Candyland is not even a game. It's a toy. It's a toy that teaches turn taking to children, but it is not a game in terms of, doing anything with your brain. So the PO mirror can have Candyland games. It's not quite Candyland. On that scale, if 0 is Candyland and 10 is chess, the PO mirror is probably like a 5.7. But there are games that feel like full Candyland special, where if you just have 3 or 4 Moxen in your hand and resolve a PO, your opponent's never going to catch up. That's pretty much what happened game 1 for me. And then game 2, this was one of the most exciting games of the tournament for me. My opening hand, I mulled a 6. My opening hand is Pyroblast, Paradoxical Outcome, Black Lotus, Mana Crypt, Mox Ruby, or no, I drew the Lotus on my turn. The keep was PO, Pyroblast, Crypt, Soul Ring, Opal, Ruby. So it's a protected turn 1 Paradoxical Outcome, just to the moon. And I drew my first draw of the game, ended up being Black Lotus, which I didn't know at the time, but it does make that hand a lot better. And basically I was like, I'm never mulliganing this. I just hope he doesn't have the one of Vexing Bauble. And he did. He did play the turn 1 Vexing Bauble, which immediately turned off my entire hand. I believe I went to discard to hand size twice that game before finding a land and eventually digging my way up. Like, the land lets me cast Mana Vault, and then Mana Vault gets me a Thundertrap Trainer, and I started to do stuff. But in the meantime, my opponent had PO'd for 3 or 4, and then PO'd for 5 or 6. And then after I was down all those cards, I find Thundertrap Trainer, who finds Seal of Cleansing out of the sideboard. On the next turn, I Seal of Cleansing my opponent's Vexing Bauble, and then dump out all of this mana that's been built up in my hand. And I still have the Pyroblast, still have the PO. I have all this mana. My opponent has PO'd for 10 extra cards, but hasn't killed me yet. So obviously his hand's going to be good, but you know, if it was that good, he would have kept going, and he didn't. So I Gitaxian Probe the hand, and I see Paradoxical Outcome, Force of Will, or no, it's Force of Will, Misstep, Pyroblast, and Thundertrap Trainer. So it's double Pyroblast, Mental Misstep for my Pyroblast, which is my protection card for my PO, Force of Will, an extra blue card he doesn't need, like he needs Thundertrap Trainer at that point, and 2 POs to send it through the rest of the deck on his very next turn. And I'm just like, okay, well, I'm not going to concede, but I'm pretty dead. I passed to my opponent's turn. With 8 mana total, he casts a Paradoxical Outcome, targeting all his legal targets. I respond with Pyroblast. And here, I think my opponent must have not updated the brain pattern to account for the fact that I killed his Vexing Bauble last turn. Because instead of Mental Misstepping my Pyroblast, he taps his other 4 mana, now tapped out, to Paradoxical Outcome on top of the stack. So it's first PO, my Pyroblast, his PO. And then I force his second PO. And when I cast Force, I think he realizes that zeros are back on the menu. But now he's tapped out of the 2 Pyroblasts. So he forces back on my Force. And then I cast the PO from my hand in response for 5. In the 5 cards I draw, there's 2 more Force of Wills and a blue card. And I had picked up Thundertrap Trainer with my PO, so that's the other blue card. So I'm then able to force back on his Force, countering the first PO. He missteps. I force the PO again, and he just has to pass tapped out into my now full hand. And I was able to, in pitching 2 cards to Force of Will when you only have 6 cards in your hand, cost me a lot of action. And I still know he has 2 Pyroblasts in hand. But I did find 4th Aerolingus, which is not a blue card. You can't Pyroblast that one. And I just like elbow tapped Lingus for... I was 1 horse short of lethal, so I went for a mid-size one that could get it done in 2 hits while leaving some mana up. And I took a big swing, drew 1 card for the Monarch. It didn't really help. And then opponent drew for turn, and it was not something that could get him out from under the wall of horses. And that's one of those things where... And none of this is ever to rag on my opponents. It's just about like sleeping well before a tournament, eat a good breakfast, let your brain have as much chance as it can to stay on top of the changing information. Because I don't think my opponent just thought in open world POing on top of a PO was a better play. Because even if that one resolves, it retroactively counters the bottom one because all the targets are gone and it would just fizzle. So I think my opponent must have genuinely forgotten that Vexing Bauble was gone for just long enough to make a mistake. And I won a game that I definitely should not have.
This video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, the easiest way to build Magic decks online. Moxfield supports over 30 formats, including Legacy and everything else you'll see on this channel. There's multiple customizations so you can interact with your deck how you want. Views such as text, grid, or stacks, and groupings like type, subtype, color, color identity, even artist. The site offers light mode, dark mode, and so much more. However you want to see your deck, Moxfield can provide it for you. Follow my Moxfield to keep up with the channel and what I'm playing in paper. I'll see you there.
The next round, I played against a known northeastern area dredge expert who was on Jeskai Lurrus PO. Which luckily I knew because I had scouted the field a little bit. I just looked around and tried to see who was on what. So I did not keep any hands based on thinking he was Dredge, but he also revealed Lurrus, so I would have been tipped off anyway. I knew he was Esper when we sat down, and Esper has access to Time Vault Manifold Key as another combo exit. They can also Yawgmoth's Will as a second round of combo, but they do have to play clunky cards that don't function in isolation, like Manifold Key and Time Vault and Yawgmoth's Will, where all of the cards in this deck are pretty good on their own. I don't remember a lot of details of this. I think game one, we both got off early POs and mine just materialized into a second round and his didn't. Sorry to my opponent if I'm not remembering that right. Game two, I think he mulled to 5 and I countered the first stock up with, I think his hand was like land, crypt, stock up, I force it, he forces back. And so he gets to stock up, but from Hellbent when I still have 5 cards in my hand and I'm about to draw a card, and just didn't find another mana source. I, at one point in that game, Seal of Cleansing to his like Soul Ring or Mana Crypt or something to take him off a big, like 2/3 of his mana. And our game 2, I just remember him not really ever getting anything going and just sort of playing draw go while I functioned, and he did not. That match might have went to 3. Sorry, I'm just fully blanking on this. Apologies to my opponent. I think he might have got me in game 2. And then game 3 was the uneventful one. This one, Fleshraker PO, was against the tournament organizer for the Oklahoma Land Run, an event that's coming up soon. If you're in the Oklahoma area and like playing Legacy and Vintage, check that out. He was on a build of Paradoxical Outcome that had Ancient Tomb in it. I never saw Glaring Fleshraker, but I know there are these hybrid Fleshraker Paradoxical Outcome decks. I did see Ancient Tomb, like I mentioned. I saw Sensei's Divining Top. I saw multiple Sensei's Divining Tops, which is why I think Fleshraker is in there. And this match, our game 1 was kind of interesting back and forth, but I eventually broke through first with the first big spell and then kept it going. Game 2 was the most vintage experience imaginable. It was the full like Uno reverse card out of the wallet moment. We both kept hands. He shit out his whole hand and cast PO. I cast Force of Will, untapped, and then shit out my whole hand and cast PO. And I won that game because my PO resolved and his did not. Round 6, Jeskai Lurrus control. This is a matchup that can be tough, but there is a thing going on in the vintage metagame overall right now where Jeskai Lurrus control or Esper Lurrus control, the Lurrus control decks, are the best performing deck by the numbers. But one of their weaknesses can be the Paradoxical Outcome deck. It's just the raw grind of the stock ups, the trainers, everything just staying on top of it. And this is a deck that has to win with Psychic Frog and Orcish Bowmaster. And I have Swords to Plowshares and Pyroblast in my main, +4 Force of Wills, plus out of the sideboard up to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more spot removal spells. I can have 9 spot removal spells for the 8 threats that deck plays, plus the Lurrus that is always lurking in the command zone. And they have to deploy those threats and get them connecting through my 9 spot removal spells while also fending off my combo, where if I start stocking up or resolve a PO, they just become irrevocably behind. So I quite like, at least on paper, what I need to do in this matchup. And it is pretty much how this unfolded. We went to 3, and I don't remember a lot of the details. I remember there was an Orcish Bowmaster in play at one point that did a few points of damage, and then I was able to clear it and win on the other side. I remember a Psychic Frog connecting 3 or 4 times, but opponent didn't have enough cards in hand, enough resources to make the frog any bigger, so it was just 1 damage at a time, and despite being hit 3 or 4 times with the Psychic Frog, the game was still pretty close. But I did triumph here. And that's one of the things that I like about this deck a lot. Like, you can just become Jeskai Lurrus control. Like, you can board out 2 Paradoxical Outcomes, a Mox Opal, even Mana Crypt could come out, Vexing Bauble, if the matchup's about fair stuff, you could get rid of that and bring in those 7 cards I mentioned, and then you're basically just a wall of hyper-efficient 1 mana removal, backed by Stock Up, Thundertrap Trainer, Snapcaster Mage, Flame of Anor. You have Lurrus waiting, and 4th Aerlingus is a big eject button whenever you need it. And plus, you still get the Power 9 cards like Time Walk and Ancestral Recall. You can just be Jeskai control with this, with a powerful draw engine. And that's a posture that I like taking against decks like this that have a hard time keeping up with that, especially if they're boarding in a bunch of Null Rods and stuff to defend against your combo, and you've just boarded out 3 or 4 artifacts that the null rod would affect, and the POs that care the most about you having artifacts. That game plan worked out well here. Round 7, I drew with my finals opponent from last year, Hank, and seeing that I got paired against Hank, I actually had a moment of thinking if he was going to make me play it out, because he had 16 points. He was already locked for top 8, win, lose, or draw. And Hank is a gamer. Like, I mean, he obviously has a tournament resume. That's not what I'm talking about, but I've been in Legacy top 8s with Hank where he refuses the split and wants to battle to the very end. He is the type of person who would both understand that he's in anyway, and he would like to play for seed, and he would like 2 shots at taking me out of the tournament because I beat him in the finals last year. All of these factors, I got to the table and I'm like, do you want to draw? And he's like, I don't know. I think I want to play for seed. And I said, you will be 2nd or 3rd seed, maybe even 1st, like depending on how this thing breaks out. You'll be upper bracket with a draw. And he was like, yeah, but I don't want to play you in the finals again. And I said, yeah, but if I beat you now, I'll be on the play when we meet in the finals again. And that convinced him to take the draw. So he did end up 3rd. I ended up 7th going into top 8. And I didn't add a post about it. My top 8 match was against Esper Lurrus Control. As I said earlier about Dimir Lurrus Control, it's the same deck except it splashes white. And one of the cards it splashes white for is Lavinia, Azorius Renegade. That card is a huge pain in the ass. My opponent was on the play, had turn 1 Lavinia on game 1 and in game 2, and I was not able to overcome the Lavinia backed by the follow-up, and it was like one of those games where every card mattered the entire time, where it's like I would find Swords to Plowshares just in time for him to have drawn Spell Pierce for the Swords to Plowshares, or just like that sort of thing. Like I find Portable Hold just in time for him to find Mental Misstep, and I was just off balance, and frankly, these games were not particularly close, and I got completely obliterated. And it was on the strength of the white cards. It was not Psychic Frog or Orcish Bowmaster I was worried about. It was Lavinia. And that was the person who ended up winning the tournament. So shout out to Jacob and his win. Here is the deck. Again, of course, it is on my Mox field. Vintage is such a cool format. I think it's so healthy right now. There are, of course, anytime a deck is good or new or surprising or propped up by a new card, there are folks who call for bans or restrictions. Lurrus is under Wizards of the Coast eye on the last ban and update announcement, and I'm only talking about this because there's one coming up in a couple weeks. On the last BNR update, Wizards of the Coast did not say anything about Vintage other than they have their eye on Lurrus of the Dream Den. And since then, Stock Up has been printed. If there is a ban, it's Lurrus. If there's a restriction, it's Stock Up. I don't think they're going to touch PO. I don't think Thundertrap Trainer is the problem, and encouraging creature-centric gameplay seems awesome for Vintage. If there's a ban, it's Lurrus. If there's a restriction, it's Stock Up, but I think this deck is appropriate, and not just because I'm succeeding with it, but because it is cool. It has a very Vintage archetype. It has weaknesses. Nullrod, Vexing Bauble, Chalice of the Void, Void Mirror, Lavinia. There are a bunch of cards that are played in decks. Archon of Emeria, Clarion Conqueror. Tons of stuff that naturally lines up well against what this deck is doing, and I think it's appropriate. I hope that Vintage gets no changes on the June 30th ban update that is coming out soon. I'm going to leave this here. One more sad look at the time walk. I'm actually very happy, I promise. Everyone, thanks for watching. Nick, thank you for organizing the event. The judge staff who ran it, the stream team who put it out to the world, the vendors, of course, toamagic.com. Use code BOSH for 5% off your order. Another great event. I hope that they keep happening every year, and I hope to keep showing up. Thanks, everyone, and I will see you next time.